What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Leo coming to you guys with yet another video. Coming to you guys today with a pretty much more of like a little wrestling discussion. We're going to be talking about the WWE draft. The WWE draft was pretty much confirmed that will be happening in the next few weeks by Triple H on last week's edition of SmackDown. And I wanted to do this video. Well, not pretty much say like who is going where. I could do a video like that if you guys want me to, but this video is pretty much more like saying things that I will want to happen in this draft. Triple H said this one is going to be very much different than the ones we have seen. So I was just going to give you guys something things I think would pretty much help and kind of really further push the idea of this WWE draft being different from the ones we've seen in previous years. So we're gonna get into this video right now. So the first thing I would say we need is a women's mid card championship. I think it's time for the women to get a little bit more attention, a little bit more opportunities for these women to do, because it's become a thing where not everybody can go after the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship, and we all know that. And not everybody can go after the Women's Tag Team Championships. I think a Women's Mid Card Championship will be beneficial to the women because, like, if you're not going after the Raw or SmackDown Championship, or pretty much not in a random tagging going after the tag titles, you're pretty much floundering and have nothing to do, or pretty much are going to get fed to the more popular women. I wouldn't say popular, but the more women are like on the top, like the top women in the company for Raw and SmackDown. So you're pretty much going to get fed to them. And I think a women's mid card championship will give someone like a Liv Morgan or a Raquel Gonzalez or a Dana Brooke or someone like that a chance to pretty much get a championship without and being built up from that point to potentially go for the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship. I think that will be something I think a lot of us fans can get into, because I think it's a situation where the tag team titles for the women don't really hold as much weight anymore. Like, the only time I feel like those titles really meant something is pretty much when Sasha and Bailey held it. I think those are the only times I can really think that those titles actually meant something. I think maybe we could have seen something with the Iconics. I think that kind of made sense for them to hold the tag titles, but then it just really went downhill from there. And I think we kind of seen a little bit of the resurrection, somewhat of it, when we seen in the pandemic era in 2020 when Bailey and Sasha held the tag titles once again. I think those are the only times those titles ever felt important, and I think a lot of the fans can kind of agree with it. But that's why I think we need a mid card championship, like a U.S. Championship or an Intercontinental, something along the lines of that. And I think it will be beneficial, and maybe you can have a situation where that title can get defended on Raw, SmackDown, and maybe even NXT, because that's more talent that you can use. That without them going for the main championship or being put in a random tag team. And if you want, if you want to keep the tag team titles, you could, actually take it serious and actually put actual tag teams to go for that championship instead of just random people time and time again. Um, but that's why I said the mid card championship needs to be part of it. But on to the next thing, and this is pretty much coincided with what I just said regarding the tag titles. I think the tag titles for the women should be emerged with the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, and you unify those tag titles and have those titles be defended on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT as well. And I think, when they first, had brought the titles, they kind of was going with that concept where they were being defended on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. But, over the last year or two, they haven't really done that. And I feel like the titles really don't mean as much. I think, at least to an extent, I think the NXT Women's Tag Team titles kind of are a little bit better in a sense, because they kind of make those titles feel more important. They're actually defended on pay-per-views, and the WWE Women's Tag Team titles don't even get to be seen pretty much every week on Raw or SmackDown. So I think them unifying the tag titles will kind of be a better option if they were to do that. I'm not sure. Maybe they could, but I'm not. I mean, we will have to see. But I think that would be actually a better concept, to instead of having just two sets of tag team titles for the women. So I think they should unify those. On to the next thing. I think this is another situation, and that also this is kind of applies to what I just said just a few seconds ago. They also need to do that for the men. I think they need to come up with a new title design. Well, I don't know. This one is different because they're not being merged with NXT or anything like that. This is pretty much strictly for the main roster. I think they need to get rid of those M&M penny titles and come up with a new design and everything. I think the tag teams need a complete rehaul everything. They need a completely different design, and you can have those titles be unified and be defended on Raw and SmackDown because I think you have more tag teams on the men's side than you do the women, and a lot of the tag teams that we see on the men's side kind of actually make sense. They pretty much have kind of been doing a little bit better with the tag teams with the men on the men's side of things because they're not really splitting them up like that. So I think that would be a interesting concept that they if they decide to unify the tag titles and just have one set of tag team titles and be defended on both brands. But I don't know if they're gonna do that, especially like I said, they have the draft, and I know Fox and USA are probably gonna want their own set of championships. So I don't know if they're gonna do that. But who knows? I mean, if we're talking about something that could be different this time, I think that would be something that's different, and I think a lot of people would want to see. Okay, here's the next, and then this one is we're gonna talk about superstars. This is a little bit of superstars, and then we'll probably come back to the whole title situation. Okay, the next thing, I think you have to keep the Judgment Day together. I think you would necessarily have to have the Judgment Day together because here's the thing: if they split them up, it kind of, I don't know how I would feel about it. The only way I would feel somewhat okay if they do this is if they send, because we all know Rhea Ripley is now the SmackDown Women's Champion, so she's gonna pretty much go to SmackDown. What I think could happen is maybe it's a situation where they do break up, but Dominic goes to SmackDown with Rhea. I think that pairing needs to stay together because I think if you have Dominic by himself, it's pretty much not gonna work. It's not gonna work, and I think his character is kind of won't feel the same anymore because he needs the Judgment Day. He needs to be surrounded with the Judgment Day, and especially with Rhea because I think Rhea adds another dimension and layer to his character because we kind of see parallels between Eddie Guerrero RP and China because you remember that they had that pairing where Eddie he pretty much was kind of new in a sense, but he had people were getting more and more used to him and loved him, and pretty much China added more dimension to his character. So I think there are parallels we can see that with Rhea and Dom. So I think Dominic needs to stay with Rhea Ripley. So hopefully they do. If they do decide to split them, they at least keep Rhea and Dominic together. On to the next thing. I think this is another thing that we have to talk about. I've been hearing this for months, probably a year now. The possibility of the Street Profits breaking up or some type of split. I think I think a split could happen here where we get to see without them actually one turning on the other because I don't think we need to see the Street Profits turn on each other. I think the best way to pretty much get away from that but still break them off is pretty much have Montez get drafted to SmackDown. He gets drafted to SmackDown, and Montez stays on Raw. I think that would be a cool concept to do because I think a lot of us fans know are kind of behind Montez right now and really want to see him get that push to the upper mid card or probably even the main event. And I think him going to SmackDown, I think he can definitely accomplish that. And no disrespect to Montez, I think he could do great things on Raw. He can go after the U.S. Championship, or maybe even he might something else can happen. Maybe get a little tweaking in his character and become a little bit more serious. I wouldn't mind that. But I think that this is the time to probably pull the trigger on that and have the Street Profits break off without turning on each other. The next thing we got to talk about is pretty much something I said a little bit earlier, and have NXT be part of the draft. And here's why. Because you can bring people up from people get drafted to from NXT to the main roster. But what if they add a little spin on things, but not only having NXT people get drafted to Raw or SmackDown, have people who aren't really getting used on Raw or SmackDown get drafted to NXT. And I know some people might consider it like a demotion, but not really, because you if you don't have a lot of time to invest in some of these wrestlers who are pretty much talented, you can pretty much send them to NXT if you don't have anything to do for them and you still want them on your roster. So I think having that will kind of be beneficial, and it'll be kind of be beneficial because some of the people that's in NXT can get a little taste of what some of these what the main roster is gonna be like, having some of these talent that are actually from the main roster, giving them that exposure, giving these people who potentially can go to Raw and SmackDown that exposure that they're gonna need going to the main roster. Because here's the thing, a lot of these people don't that come from NXT, people aren't really accustomed to. People really don't know like that. There's only been a very few exceptions. We've seen it with Kevin Owens, we've seen it with Sami Zayn, those two people, because they had exposure from the outside of WWE. People coming in who don't really and stuff like don't really know, you can have them who pretty much went to the main roster go down to NXT, giving some people exposure, having people that's been on the main roster, pretty much feuding with some of these people from NXT, and that can probably get more eyes on NXT in the long run. So I think that's something that you should look at as well. And I think the last thing we pretty much would have to cover is if they want to do, what are they going to do with the Undisputed Championship, which is currently being held by Roman at the time we're recording this video. So the thing is, what do you do with that? Do you keep those titles on him, or do you have him drop, or like have to relinquish one of the titles, and maybe like the WWE Championship, and have that go back to Raw, and they have like a tournament or something? I think them doing something like that will kind of be very interesting, because you can keep one of the championships on Roman, but he doesn't really get beaten in a sense, because he's held that title for like 950 days. We're not talking about the WWE Championship here. We're not. We're talking about the Universal. The Universal he's been holding for 950 days. The WWE Championship he's held for a year. So if he was to, relinquish one of the championships, maybe like in the draft, like they say, well, he's holding both championships and we need our championship back, because Fox and USA are pretty much going to kind of be in a little bit of limbo, because the thing is, Raw doesn't have a world championship, and the thing is, the titles are pretty much being held hostage. And from a booking standpoint, they are, because the championships aren't not going to be seen like that. Roman is a part timer. He's not going to show up like that. He's not going to show up at every pay per view. He's not going to show up at every Raw. He's not going to show up at every SmackDown. So what they could do is, if they want to have a WWE Championship champion be crowned, have the championship be relinquished by Roman and be sent back to Raw. Now USA can be kind of happy, because now they have their championship back and they can have a full-time champion, while SmackDown, on the other hand, is going to be held by Roman until he eventually drops that title. But I don't know what they're going to do with it. Maybe they keep those titles on Roman, and maybe USA, pleads with, the WWE have to bring in a championship, like an interim championship, until they figure out what they're going to do with Roman and the situation of him dropping one of the championships. Maybe they can bring back like the World Heavyweight Championship, and bring that back to Raw, like the big gold championship, bring that back to Raw. I think people would pop for that. It's nostalgia at its finest, and I think a lot of fans will kind of be a little bit happier that they at least have a championship on Raw, because as you can see from WrestleMania, a lot of people were hot because they wanted Cody to win, and they didn't. They pretty much went with Roman. So it's like, I don't know if they're gonna have to, if they do this draft, I don't know what they're gonna do if they don't take one of the titles off of Roman. I don't know if they have to wait it out till SummerSlam, possibly, because I think that's the next thing that a lot of people are speculating, is probably the possibility of Cody winning the championships at SummerSlam, and you build Jay versus Roman post SummerSlam, and then leading to WrestleMania next year, where we have The Rock and Roman face each other. So I don't know what they'll do with that. But that is the end of the video. You guys like, comment, subscribe to the channel. If you are new, hit the post notification bell, so every time I post a new video, we're on the road to 500 subscribers. We're trying to get to 1K by the end of the year. Let's get 5 likes on this video. 5 likes on the video. I'll do like a part 2 to this, where I just say, I go down some of the wrestlers, or probably go down the roster and say where they should end up. and whatnot like that. If you guys want to see that, let's get 5 likes on this video and I'll do a part 2 to this. I appreciate you guys kicking it with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.